How's it going? Wooden Spoon Supercoach here. Welcome to the run home. I've updated the colours on the charts for team difficulty and I've made it slightly less categories. I've gotten rid of the Supercoach points scored and conceded per game because those stats are more useful at the start of the season when we don't really know what to fully expect from each team. Now that we've seen a lot of footy, we kind of know where the points are coming from, which teams are leaking, and I've reduced it to only 4 difficulty categories. The hardest teams to play being Red, Raiders, Storm, Bulldogs, and Panthers. Let's be real, Panthers are back to being a top tier team. They're still very much a threat, more so just week to week in a Supercoach sense than a premiership threat, even though they still are, but they're definitely deserving of being up in that top category. Following them, we've got the Warriors, Broncos, Dolphins, and Sharks. The Warriors could easily slip down into a yellow team depending on how they go with their halves restructure with Luke Metcalf's season ending injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on them. The way the Broncos are playing at the moment, they could easily find their way up into the red category. Same with the Dolphins. The Sharks could see themselves go down into yellow, but they're still a very good team. So I think we'll call the orange category the wait and see category. Then yellow, you've got all your teams who are amazing on their day but can leak points. We've got Manly, Roosters, Dargans, Cowboys, Tigers, and Eels. I think all these teams have some decent attacking upside in them, but they just lack the consistency to do it often. Manly could see their way up into orange. They're playing a lot better in the last couple of weeks, but we need to still see some consistency from them. The Roosters, I think, will end up being a orange team with all their origin guns returning. I think they're going to make a push, and the rest of the teams are slowly getting more and more relevant. But the Titans, Rabbitohs, and Knights are all the biggest teams to target. Obviously, the Titans are the favourites for the Wooden Spoon, and they let in heaps of points, and they've got injuries and everything. It's just not happening for them this year. So that's this first section. This section on the right are good stretches of games for the teams. So this will be really handy for picking pod options at the right time and also just seeing which gun you might want over another. So if you want to use this table, I'll leave a link to it in the description. And for the rest of the video, we're going to go through every single position and just chat about the options, pod moves, what the majority is probably going to do. Let's get into it. Before we get started, if you have any questions I don't answer in this video, feel free to drop them down below. I will respond to all of them. And if you have an origin bet you'd like to leave in the comments, I will put every single one of them on, and all the ones that win get added to the Supercoach prize pool, which is getting towards $500, so it's getting pretty juicy. Starting off with the hookers. For me, I've got Cam McInnes and Owen Paddy, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to make any changes. Cam McInnes is doing just fine, 50 to 65 every single week. Maybe once or twice on the run home, he jags himself a try and gets himself a nice big score, but that's not what you got him for. You got him for the consistency. Owen Paddy's an AE nightmare, but I have 10 trades going into this week, and I don't think one of those trades is worth nuffing him out or getting someone else in. I've said it a million times this year, AE nightmares are nowhere near as bad as they have been in previous years because of the flex position, but they still exist. So as for the other hooking options, we'll filter by highest average. Connor Watson is a fantastic option now that Origin's wrapping up. I think the Roosters are going to make a push on the run home. They need to win a lot of games. It's a very tight comp. It's worth noting that all these teams, sort of from 5th down to 12th, they're all in the running for the finals. And if we can identify which of those teams really do start to make a push, it's good to get on them sooner rather than later. Connor Watson is a little bit expensive, 613k. He does have that nice duel, and he is 20% owned. So if you're in my position, I don't think he's worth getting in because you've got McInnes. Let's have a look at the Roosters' run. So the Roosters are one of the few teams that don't have a pink highlighted section. They've got a pretty consistent sprinkling of difficult games in there. So round 20, they've got the Sharks, followed by Melbourne, not the easiest of draws, followed by Manly away. Manly at Four Pines is a different team. That's also tough. Dolphins is also tough. Bulldogs is also tough. Parramatta, a little bit easier. Melbourne, tough again. And then Souths in the last game. It's a grudge match. They'll have Latrell. Souths could be fighting for a top 8 spot at this point, so that could easily be a tough game as well. So draw definitely isn't everything, especially with these better teams. They can all get scores on their day, but it's definitely something to consider that the Roosters have a tough draw coming up. So with that in mind, let's move to option 2, who is Cameron McInnes. 522k. He's the cheapest option of the 3. You can probably guess who the third is, but he's just rock solid. Draw doesn't matter to McInnes. He's one of the most consistent players in the game, And I think for a low upside position this year, like hooker, it's nice just to get a guy in who is just nice and consistent, isn't going to cause you headaches, you don't have to think about it. He's my pick for the run home. Option 3 is Harry Grant. 594k, 20k cheaper than Connor Watson. Playing in this gun storm side, and there's definitely room for his average to improve on the run home. He's been pretty lackluster this year. It does seem to be the case that he explodes a bit after Origin, and that's where he starts to really get into his work. And I think Melbourne will be putting some teams to the sword. The only thing with Harry Grant is he has been a little bit injury affected this year, and Craig Bellamy isn't shy about resting his players on the run home. If you were going to go a Harry Grant, you probably would want a decent-ish cheap option on the bench. Talon De Silva at Parramatta would be perfect for that. He's nice and cheap. Not sure what the job security's like or how many minutes he's going to get or if he's going to be sharing a role, but that is the concern with Harry Grant. I think if you've got a team like mine and you've already got Jerome Hughes and Cameron Munster, and Wishart, but he'll be going, that's a lot of Melbourne players to risk getting rested at the end of the year when it all really matters. So long story short, for hooker, my pick is Cameron McInnes. Let's just quickly have a look at the Storm run. So again, Storm a team without any pink highlights, so there isn't a crazy stretch of games. They've got Manly at home. Manly will have to be pretty good to beat them at home, but they are looking a bit better. Roosters are looking better. Para are looking better. Broncos are looking better. Penrith are looking better. Bulldogs is tough. And then Roosters and Broncos are also not easy games. So Storm don't have the best run home, but they are the form team of the last like fucking 20 years. They can towel up anyone on their day. There's just been a few little speed bumps in their season. They haven't been as clinical. Maybe that causes bellyache to not rest players towards the back end of the season if they're really pushing for that top 4 spot. So definitely keep that in mind with your Storm players. Moving on to the front row, we won't spend a lot of time here. I imagine everyone's front row looks just about the same. Payne Haas is having a season like I've never seen a front rower have. If you did sell him over the Origin period, you need to get him back. There's no two ways about that one. We'll gloss over Terrell May. Pretty much everyone's got him. And if you don't have him, you're probably not wanting to spend that much to bring him back in, but he will be staying in my side. This is an interesting one, Tino. So if we have a look at his scores, from round 2 up to round 11, he was averaging 82, and he was an amazing guy to have in your team. Since Origin, he's gone 57, 51, 38, 57. I sold him in round 11, so I timed it to absolute perfection. And a couple of these weeks he has had a lower minute role, but he is also carrying an injury. I forget what it is, but whatever it is, it's definitely affecting his output. There is no part of me that wants to bring Tino back in. The Titans are dead and buried, dead last. They've got some good performances in them and they can score points. But with the Titans' form and the fact that Tino's carrying an injury, that is enough for me to steer clear. Don't get me wrong, he could definitely pick it up and get some better scores for the end of the year, but in terms of the forwards, I'm already set, and I feel like a lot of people are as well. So if you've got him, I do think there's a play where you could nuff him out to upgrade elsewhere. He is only 573k, which is a little bit lackluster, but I just really think that money would be better invested into other positions. Next up, we got Joey Taps. Similarly to Tino, from round 1 to 11, he was averaging about 80, but then once we hit the Origin period, his average has lost 10 points. And there's a couple of low scores creeping in there. And obviously another low score this week with his injury, and now he's on the bye. So I think there will be a lot of people who are sick of his shit and move him on. And I see no problems with that. You definitely don't want to be bringing him in at the moment. So I think that's enough on him. Aaron Clark is a fantastic option. 670k. He's very expensive. Averaging 70, 26% owned. He falls into the same category as a lot of these players. If you've got him, keep him. If you don't and you want to get him, you can. But at this stage, I don't know if trading at front row is really that beneficial unless you've got an absolute shitter that you need to get out, or if you're nuffing someone out. Fanua Blake, he is getting a little more consistent. He's not scoring tries, which sucks. And the Sharks' form is questionable at the moment. So it's kind of hard to get a read on him. He's still averaging 70. And really all it takes is for him to crash over the line to get a very good score. So he also falls into that category of if you've got him, keep him, but you probably don't want to buy him. And then we've got Keon down here, who's also a really, really good option. So I think my top 3 front row forwards are Payne Haas and Terrell May, surprise, surprise. And third, probably Fanua Blake or Aaron Clark. or Koloamatangi, but he's more of a second row option. Same with Aaron Clark. Speaking of second row forward, let's move down there. First up, Hudson Young. I love Hudson for the run home. He's in some serious form this year. The Raiders are killing it. I see no reason to not bring him in. He's very expensive. I feel like if you don't have him, it's probably a bit late. That's a lot of money to throw into your second row forward at this time of the year. But if you can make it work, 100% get him in. I love it. Dylan Lucas is an interesting one. He's been very good this year. I've had him for most of the year, averaging 78.2. This one's just a question of whether the Knights can sort their shit out. They're missing Ponga, they're missing Fletcher Sharp. So who knows what's going to happen with their attack when it's already been struggling a lot this year. But luckily, being a forward, Dylan Lucas isn't very reliant on attacking stats, but he does have the ability to get them if the Knights can find their way up the park. So he's one where if you've got him, definitely keep him, but I wouldn't go buying him. I think there's just a couple of question marks around him at the moment. Eli Katoa, very highly owned, so I won't go over him too much. His combination with Jerome Hughes is starting to heat up, but Melbourne have a tough run home, and there's the risk of restings towards the end of the year, as I've already gone over, so we'll gloss over that. We've been over Tino. Viliami Kikau, averaging 71 for the Bulldogs, who are another in-form side. 17% a team, so he's a bit more potty. 670k is a fair bit for him, but there's a lot of people in the Supercoach community pretty excited about Kikau. The narrative recently has been that he has been so close to getting these attacking stats every game, and he's this close to going absolutely huge. We didn't really see that on the game just gone. He did score a try for a 69. There wasn't quite as much base there, but the potential is still definitely there. So if you're looking at him, I like it. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to put a line through Preston. I think if you're going to get one of these two guys, Kikau is the guy. Now, Hamoli's an interesting one. When's he expected back? Round 20 to 21. Just quickly back to the Bulldogs. They have a really good stretch of runs just here. They've got St. George and Manly at home, West Tigers away, and then New Zealand at home. Definitely a good month to target for your Kikau owners, Karaz owners, anyone potting up with Connor Tracy. Next month's looking pretty hot, and the same can be said for Hudson Young's next month. So yeah, back to Hamoli. He'll be back in round 2021, so he's actually not that far away. And I would say that's actually perfect. Let's say he comes back round 21, then we've got a game against the Bulldogs, the Roosters, and the Raiders to see how he goes before deciding on whether we pick him up for the games against the Tigers, Dolphins, Dragons, and New Zealand. Getting to round 24, people are definitely going to be running very low on trades, so this would be a big pod move. And we've seen Olakau'atu's upside. He hasn't been reaching the heights of prior seasons this year, but we know he's got it in him. He's a fucking beast. And if you do happen to have a couple of spare trades at the back end of the year, he could be a very interesting pod to bring in, especially if there's an injury or something that forces that trade. Fermor, Carrigan, and Nicholson, I am not interested in. Angus Crichton. I was thinking that he'd be a decent option for the run home. He's averaging 64. He's 584k, so he's technically underpriced. But the Roosters do have that tough run coming up. We haven't really seen the scores of Angus like we did last year. I think I just need to see it a little bit after Origin's all wrapped up. But to be honest, I can't see myself bringing him in. Pretty much any of these guys that are down at like the 550k and below, the decision you've got to make there is basically, do you want to keep them for depth or do you want to nuff them out and use the money to upgrade elsewhere? There might be a couple of guys in here that you wouldn't want to trade out, but we're looking at some pretty low ownership dudes down here, so let's move on. Alright, now we're getting into the meat of it. Halfback. So the number one halfback, averaging 75.9, is obviously Nathan Cleary. My origin plan has always been to get Cleary back in for round 19, which is this week, but I'm going to have to nuff someone out to do it. So that makes it a little tough, but he does have an 113 break even, so maybe he drops that little bit of cash that lets me get him in without nothing. But yeah, Cleary, I would say, is pretty close to a must-have for the run home, especially this next month. They've got Parramatta this week, which is a decent-ish matchup, but Para seem to get up against the Panthers. But following that, we've got Souths at home, Tigers at home, Gold Coast away, Newcastle away. Cleary is going to put on a fucking clinic for this month, and you know what? For round 20 through to round 23, he is a must-have. Against Parramatta this week, you can let it go for 1 week, and hopefully he drops a bit of cash for you, unless he goes fucking crazy. But I do not want to know what it feels like to not have Cleary in my team when he's playing Souths, Tigers, Gold Coast and Newcastle back to back to back to back. And then looking past there, they've got Melbourne, Canberra, and Bulldogs. So 3 of the top 4. They'll be looking to make statements against all 3 of those teams. And then St. George in round 27, he'll probably be 90% captained by the whole competition. So find a way to get Cleary in. You won't regret it. Next up, we got Nicho Hynes. I sold him last week. I've been saying all year that he's still averaging decent, and he is. A 70 average is good, but at halfback, we need some ceiling, and we just haven't seen it much from Nicho this year. And I'm not sure if we will with the Sharks' form. They're super hard to pick. And if we go over to his scores, he's only scored 2 tons this year. 2 tons and 190. And then a lot of just 60s, 70s, 50s, 40s. It was worth holding on to him until this point, but I'm not keen anymore. I think you need to get a Cleary, a Jerome Hughes. I like Isaiah Katoa as an option. But yeah, I just don't know if Nicho Hynes is it. Speaking of, moving on to Isaiah Katoa. 635k. Oh, just before we go on to Katoa, let's just see if the Sharks have any good runs. Okay, so the Sharks do have Souths, Cowboys, Dragons, Titans by Newcastle, which is a fairly decent stretch of games. But you've got Cleary playing Tigers, Gold Coast, and Newcastle in the same time frame. I think Cleary could outscore Hynes in these 3 games when Hynes has got these 5. I also think I could be completely wrong and Hynes explodes and I look like a dickhead, but that's what I'm going with. If you're a Sharks fan or a Hynes fan and you just like having him in your team, I don't see anything wrong with it, but I won't be doing it myself. Isaiah Katoa's lowest score of the year is 42, and his lowest score since the beginning of the Origin period is 57, which is very, very good. We've seen the Dolphins put 50 points on teams in 3 of their last 4 games now. We've seen Katoa has a big ceiling, and the Dolphins are hot. So I like him infinitely more than Nicho Hynes. Funnily enough, he's coming up against him. And it's also very potty to have Isaiah Katoa in at halfback. 16% owned is still a decent amount, but for halfback, it's definitely potty. I am thinking about selling Pappenhausen and putting Isaiah Katoa in my flex. And then that allows me to have him, Cleary, and Jerome Hughes and not have to make a decision on a fullback right away. But there is a few fullbacks I would like as my third fullback over Pappenhausen, so we'll get to those eventually. But yeah, I do really like Isaiah Katoa as an option. Jerome Hughes, I feel like I don't need to say much about him. He's got a big ceiling. He got the Dally M last year. He's playing for the Storm side. There is the risk of resting, but yeah, very solid option. Adam Reynolds, not keen. He's made of glass. Jamal Fogarty, not keen. He did a job for me over the Origin period, but he just doesn't have much of a ceiling. And he can go low. DCE, nah. Dylan Brown, nah. Mitch Moses? Mitch Moses has an 124 break even, which will scare a lot of people off. He's due to come back round 20, which isn't too far away, and he's only 538k. If we have a look at Para's run, they have a very good stretch for 4 out of their 5 last games of the year, coming up against the Cowboys, Souths, Roosters, New Zealand, and Newcastle. So again, he's one that you could bring in at the end of the year as a big pod play. There aren't really any other highlighted teams with relevant halfbacks and Supercoach that have a good run at the end of the year. Maybe Cherry Evans' last 4, but I don't think we're trading him in. The Storm's last 4 is incredibly difficult, and there is a risk of resting there. And the Panthers also have a pretty tough last 4. So I don't mind the pod play, but you will need a spare trade at the end of the year, which is a rare occurrence. That's all the options for halfback. Let's move to 5/8. So Ezra Mam is the highest averaging 5/8, coming in at 570k. He's just scored 95 points. He's going up in money. He's coming up against the Titans this week. I really like it. The Broncos seem to be on an upward trend. And if we have a look at the Broncos run, bye in round 20 is rough. Para and Souths are decent matchups. Melbourne's tough. So realistically, those are home games as well. So let's highlight those. So this stretch of 6 games from round 21 to 26, minus the Melbourne game, I think Ezra could really get into his work. And who knows, there is a chance that the Broncos could perform well against Storm and he could get a good score there as well. So I really don't mind Ezra Mam for the run home. Something to consider with 5/8 though is, are you going to use a reserve on your second 5/8? Probably not. So if you're in the boat, if you're in my boat and you've got Munster, He's probably good enough, but he is also a candidate for resting towards the end of the year. And I think with Ezra Mam and the Broncos' current form, he could end up being more expensive than Munster anyway. So I've got a bit to think about there. I've got 3 Melbourne halves in my team at the moment. That's way too many. But yeah, moving on. We just talked about Munster. Jaden Campbell, who doesn't have the injury thing next to him. I don't know if he played this weekend or if the Titans even played this weekend, but 600, 564k, averaging 65. He's a great attacking player and he does have a ceiling. My issue with it is just how much do you want to invest in the Titans? And again, it's a second 5'8 spot. Would you be comfortable having Jaden Campbell as your main 5'8 and playing him every week? Or would you want to spend 5k more and get an Ezra Mam? I don't know. That seems pretty easy to me. Blaze Talungi, I just don't see it. Tom Dearden, nah. Brimo, nah. KO Weeks, yes, he scored an 156, but his scores over the stretch of the season are shocking. There's a reason he was down at that price. His average is still only 58 with an 156 just being added to that. I think he's a bit of a trap. Galvin, I'm not keen on. Latu Fainu and King Togia, decent options for backup if for whatever reason you need a backup 5'8. And it's looking like Latu's going to generate a decent bit of money as well. 21 break even, so not too much more, but for a backup option, I don't mind it. I'm starting to think I might just nuff out 5'8", not think about it. It's risky because I don't have a backup, but I'll cross that bridge when we come to it. You got to take some risks sometimes. So for 5'8", I think Cameron Munster is the nice, safe number one. If you're looking for something a little bit riskier, but potentially more upside, I'd go an Ezra Mam. And realistically, I think those are the only options you want to be looking at. All right, centre wing. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing about Herbie Farnworth. He's 950k, averaging 84, 38.3% of teams. I imagine most of you watching this have got him. If you don't, I have no idea how you're going to get him in for 915k. You'd have to absolutely rip your team apart. And I don't know if he can stay up at this price. Not many players in Supercoach dangle around the 900ks for long, particularly at centre. So I wouldn't be ripping your team apart to get him in. I think that ship's sailed. I think you need to look for another sneaky option. But he's a definite keep if you've got him. Kiraz is another great option, averaging 80. He's just a workhorse. He's got upside. He's got a big ceiling. I love it. He's in my team. He should be in most people's teams. And I won't spend too much time on these high-owned guys. Dylan Lucas we've covered. Karapani I covered a bit in my last video. But to summarize, I think the most important point with him is that you need to sell him at the right time. You don't want to hold on to him for him to get to his absolute cash peak and then sell him. You want him to generate just enough cash to turn him into a gun like a Lomax or a Val Holmes or whoever. There's a world where he does what Shibasaki does and just keeps getting good scores for the season. I really don't think he's going to outscore the top tier gun center wings from now to the end of the year. So don't get too attached to him. Kaolero back around 26-27. Maybe there's a pod play there. I don't know if I'd go up myself. Nawaka Nitawasi, my best trade-in of the year, who is coming in with a negative break-even. So he'll be back on the wing now with the returning Origin guns. And 689k, I think, is still a fantastic price for Nawaka Nitawasi. He'll get up over 700k by stepping on the field next week. We've seen his upside. We've seen his attacking talent. He's a fucking freak. I'm a little bit disappointed that he's not my pod anymore. He's kind of everyone's guy now. But at least I got on him early. And I think a lot of people will be getting on him this week as well with that break even and that decent-ish price. Ruben Garrick's owned by half a Supercoach, so we'll gloss over him. He won't be going anywhere in this team, especially now that Manly are heating up a bit. Val Holmes is an interesting one. Val Holmes at the Dragons doesn't hit like Val Holmes at the Cowboys, unfortunately. If we have a look at his scores, he's got the 1 ton for the year, but he's got a lot of 80s and 90s in there with a low score of 40. I think if the Dragons were to heat up for the run home, Val Holmes would benefit off the back of that, but I just don't know if I'm confident in the Dragons to make a serious push for the finals. If they do start to string some wins together, we can probably revisit this, but I think Holmes is one of the guns that I'm happy to let slip. One of the guns I'm not happy to let slip, though, is Zach Lomax. Similar price, similar average. Similarly, he's only got 1 ton so far this year. But again, a lot of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And he has a much higher floor with a 47 there, but that was against Melbourne when Parra was shit. So I really like Lomax for the high floor, and there's definitely some ceiling there, and the Eels are a much improved team to when they started the year. You know what's crazy though? I think Lomax will be my center wing 5. Obviously Herbie's number 1, Kiraz is number 2, Garrick's number 3, and honestly, I think Nawaqanita just pips Lomax for me. Mostly because of the team he plays for. I'm more confident in the Roosters to score heaps of points than I am for the Eels. But say theoretically Lomax was at the Roosters, then everyone would want him. He'd be a must have. So I also really like Lomax there. Fletcher Sharp's another interesting one. We still don't know when he is to come back, but the Knights don't really have any decent stretch of games here. But if Fletcher Sharp does come back, Kalen Pong is done for the year. He's had surgery on his Liz Frank. All the attack will be funneling through Fletcher Sharp, and I think the Supercoach scores will reflect that. Obviously, he's a wait and see with the injuries, but we'll come back to that. Bradman Best, you could make a similar argument for that with Sharp and Ponga out, a lot of the attack's going to flow around him, but he's just a bit rocks or diamonds for my liking. And the rest of these guys, Johnston, I'm not keen on. Marzu, I'm not keen on. Coates, I'm calling off on. Lehigh's an interesting one. So I've been saying all year that Lehigh at fullback ain't it, and he's not. Lehigh on the wing gets through a shitload of work and also is on the wing to get those easier attacking stats. From fullback, he gets a lot of work done, and he is involved in tries, but he's not usually getting the try or the try assist. It's normally just like a try contribution. So the common thought process in Supercoach is center wing moves to fullback, good. Not in this case. I think this is one of the only cases where a center moving to fullback negatively affects scores. And I think people are starting to realize that now. And I think he will be traded out with Manly coming into the bye this week. However, Turbo's heating up. He's looking really good, confident, and healthy. And I don't think it's long before he gets moved to fullback and therefore Lehigh back onto the wing. So there's definitely an argument to be made to hold Lehigh for when he does get put back on the wing, or if you didn't bring him in for the fullback stint, there's an argument to be made to bring him in when he goes back to wing, and there could be some value there. I love Lehigh, he's a great player, but just not quite there for Supercoach. Tom Jenkins is more expensive than Brian To'o, what the fuck. To'o for the run home. I've never been that hot on To'o as a Supercoach option. I know that sounds crazy with how good Penrith have been lately, but how good of a winger he is doesn't really translate into Supercoach points, unfortunately. He is a little bit attacking stat reliant. Don't get me wrong, he gets through a lot of work and gets a lot of base stats for a winger, but it just feels like to me that there is better options. And Penrith are one of those teams where when they're on, they can score anywhere on the park. They don't just spread it to the wing every play and score that way. So I'm not that keen on To'o. There is also this knee to be concerned about. I'm pretty sure he's been cleared for Origin as well, so I'm not too worried about that. But he won't be coming into my team. Nick Meaney, there's probably a few people looking at him this week with that giant score and the low break even. I'm not keen on it. There's a reason he's 486k. He's been scoring pretty lackluster all year. There's an argument to be made he becomes an option if he picks up the goal kicking from Pappenhausen, who has a calf injury. Pappenhausen may spend some time on the sideline recovering from that, or he might come back but just not goal kick. For me, even if Nick Meaney does keep the goal kicking, still not worth it. But if Nick Meaney keeps the goal kicking, I think that makes Pappenhausen a sell. But we'll get to the fullbacks in a bit. Anyone else here I want to go over? Tupou's always a decent pod option. Mulatalo I'm not keen on. I think that does it for the centres. Now the big position, fullback. We'll start off with the three that everyone's got. Teddy, Drinky, and Paps. Starting with Teddy. This is an interesting one because trading out Tedesco sounds crazy and it's definitely a luxury trade. But the Roosters do have a tough run coming up. And we did see on the weekend that he was going to go low if he didn't get that try. So I'm definitely not thinking of selling him anytime soon, but you just need to kind of keep these potty ideas in your head. So yeah, I'm pretty confident Teddy's going to stay in my team all year, but if the Roosters do start to regress, I will be looking to move him on. Drinkwater, however, will be staying in my team. Starting round 21, the Cowboys have a really good draw. They've got St. George at home, Sharks away, which might be tough, who knows. Para away, Newcastle at home, Tigers away. So I really like that stretch. Those are all teams that can leak points, and Drinkwater seems to generate all the points for the Cowboys, so he is definitely staying in my team. Moving on to Pappenhausen. Obviously, we didn't get him this week, and God, that hurt me. You guys have seen how much planning I've put into my Origin planning, And just not watching this game and seeing that he was out fucked me so hard when I've put so much time into getting this Origin period perfect, but these things happen. So let's have a look at Pappenhausen's scores. So again, another guy that seems to regress in the Origin period. We had an 182 in round 10 and 136 in round 6 and 131 in round 1, but without his Origin guns alongside him in the team, 35, 63, 75, 62, 48. It's a bit boring. Now, I think Pappenhausen is so highly owned because people are scared of not getting one of these like 182s or something one week. But how good is that 182 if he averages 50 or 60 for the next 5 weeks? I think there's definitely a case to be made of selling Pappenhausen and bringing in a Tom Trebojevic, a Hammer, a Drinkwater, or a Teddy if you don't have either of them. It's definitely a risky move because he could come out and absolutely kill it, but the Storm do have a fairly tough run home. And with this little calf complaint that Pappenhausen's got, he is up at the top of the list of potential restings by bellyache at the end of the season. So it'd be nice just to not have to think about that. If I sound like I'm taking crazy pills right now, keep him. Go for it. He will get some good scores. He might get some low scores. But if you are wanting to do something a little bit different and you have the same fullback setup that I do, I think he's the one to go. Dylan Edwards, 647k. So realistically, looking at Dylan Edwards' stats here, 2 tons, one of them a pretty big ton, a low of 42, but a healthy average of 72. Penrith are going to heat up, we know this, and they can score anywhere, so there's points to be had for anyone in the team. The question is, do we see Dylan Edwards go back to how he was for the last couple of years and be that really consistent 80 to 90 every week? If we do see that, then that's enough for me, and I'd like to get him in over Pappenhausen. And there is glimpses of some ceiling here from him. And we know that the Panthers have a really crazy month coming up as well. So, I really like that. In terms of fullbacks, I think he has the best draw with South at home, Tigers at home, Gold Coast away, Newcastle away. Other options like Trebojevic, Melbourne Bulldogs, Sydney Canberra, that's really tough. I definitely would rather Edwards over that. If we look at Hammer, he only plays 3 of the 4 games in this period, so Dylan Edwards will probably outscore him. Pappenhausen's draw, yeah, it's okay. It's not easy, it's not hard. I think I prefer Dylan Edwards' draw over that as well. And then Teddy, Roosters' draw is also pretty tough as well. So it's looking like Dylan Edwards is the choice for the next month. I think I've convinced myself to get him in. And that might free up the small amount of money I need to get Cleary in as well. That'd be a real nice 1-2 punch, getting Cleary and Dylan Edwards in now. So I might have to see if I can work that out. But yeah, Dylan Edwards, great option. I might even go that myself. Next up, Hamaso, 700k, averaging 70. So these high scores do make him really appealing, but there are a lot of 40s, 30s, and 20s in here. However, since the Dolphins have really clicked into form, he's had a low score of 66 and a high score of 129. The Dolphins can't keep putting 50 on every team they come up against. It's just not realistic. But I think they might have 1 or 2 more left in them for the run home. So he's a great pod option, but it kind of goes against my mantra of the year, which is consistent high floor with a ceiling. And he definitely does not have a consistent high floor. So I think I like Dylan Edwards over him. And Dylan Edwards is also cheaper. Here's another interesting one. Keanu Keeney. Expected round 21. He is playing for the Wooden Spoon favourites, which is never a good thing. But from round 21, he's got Penrith at home, which is very tough. Definitely give him the eye test for that game. But then Souths at home, Sharks away, New Zealand at home, Dolphins away, Tigers at home. I don't mind that, If there was an injury to a fullback that forced you to do a trade, you could go a Keanu Keeney as a super duper mega fucking pod. But in that scenario, I feel like a lot of people would go Latrell Mitchell, who we can see here for the last 5 games of the year has Gold Coast, Paris, St. George, bye, and then the Roosters. So that's definitely one you want to keep in mind, the Latrell Mitchell pod play at the end of the year. And on the topic of Latrell, we haven't really seen him score super well just yet, but there is that kind of aura that it's coming. But yeah, the Rabbitohs are just decimated by injuries at the moment, so definitely put a pin in him for now. Iongi's an interesting one because if you've held him this long, there's probably part of you that thinks you want to hold him for the whole year. He's averaging 63, which isn't great. He's playing for the Eels. He's got a 63 average, which isn't great. And that's because he's pretty rocks or diamonds. There's a few tons in here, a few 80s, a few 90s, but there's a lot of 40s, 30s, 20s even. I think if you're still holding on to him, you really should bite the bullet and move him on. It really isn't that much money to upgrade him to a Dylan Edwards. But if you want to save the trade and keep him, then you could do that and just reassess in the future. Turbo is a tough one. He's starting to heat up, and when he is good, he's matchup proof. So you could argue that this tough stretch here doesn't matter if he's in form. If he moves to fullback and he's fit, disregard everything I'm about to say. But this stretch of 4 games, it doesn't get much harder than that, and I think the Seagulls are really going to be tested. I think Turbo is more a last month kind of play, maybe even more so than a Latrell Mitchell, but it's a bit early to be thinking about that. If you've got Turbo, you could probably hold on to him and see how he goes. You probably don't want to burn another trade. But if you're thinking of bringing him in, obviously it's a buy this week, so you won't be bringing him in this week. But I think we need a little more time just to see it. It'll be interesting to see how he plays having a week off after the bye. So pin in that one as well. Latrell we've covered, Pong is out, and I think that's all the best options. The last thing I want to go over is the flex position. All year, it has been the strategy to have 3-gun fullbacks, and I still think that's probably the best way to go. But don't cement yourself into having 3-gun fullbacks there. You can do anything. If there's a third halfback that you just can't decide between, and you like, say you've got Jerome Hughes and Nathan Cleary already in, but you really want Isaiah Katoa, you could pop him in at flex over Pappenhausen. It might not be the best decision, but you're doing something different. We've had a little bit of a period where the fullbacks aren't really all guns blazing at the moment, and maybe for the run home we see the halfbacks become the really high upside position. So just play heads up with your flex, and just keep in mind that you can get any player down there. It doesn't have to be a fullback. You could say that if there was another forward doing as well as Terrell May or Payne Haas, they could be a flex option. If there was any player getting 80s week in, week out, I'd be happy to have them in my flex regardless of what position they are. So something to keep in mind there. So that's all I wanted to go over for this video. It's been a long one. This is going to take a fuckload to edit. So please leave a like and a subscription. I would appreciate it massively. And don't forget to leave your origin bets in the comments. I'll see you for teams list tomorrow. And good luck for round 19. Could be in for another tricky one. Uru.